Hello scuba divers! Today we're going to talk about 3 basic tips for positioning your underwater strobes. And these tips are very fundamental and something you might be intimidated by at first until you start getting in the water and experimenting with your strobes. So I'm Brent, I shoot a lot of underwater photos, and let's cue the intro. Strobe positioning. There is so much that goes into strobe positioning. It's going to be different depending on every subject, every lens port combo, distance to your subject, different types of water you're in, different strobes you're using. There's just so many variables, and we're constantly battling backscatter and different stuff like that. It's a lot of work. It's unending for every serious photographer and unending for every beginning photographer. So these tips are very basic. They're fundamental. If you haven't yet, be sure to watch my 21-minute video tutorial on underwater strobe positioning. It's linked above. It's really useful talking about single strobe and double strobe positions and some of the subtleties and reasons we're positioning strobes the way we are. So with that said, these are some of the fundamentals and the basics. And number 1, so this has to do with the strength of the arm and clamp system that we're using with the strobes. When you're transporting the camera, whether it's from the camera room to the dive boat, or from the dive boat to the swim step, or from your car to the water on a shore dive, you need the strobes to be nice and tight. But you also want them to be loose enough that you can maneuver once you get into the water. So how do we do this? Well, when we're on the land and transporting the camera, I like to really crank down on all the arms and clamps. So give them a good yank, righty-tighty, lefty-loosey, nice and tight, keep them in close to the system, and that's going to keep the system nice and compact so the strobes don't hit the sidewall of the boat or a railing and then pop and shatter, leaving you out of luck with lighting. When the system's nice and tight, I might even have a lanyard right here that a dive guide can hold to transport the camera. Nothing's going to break. Drop it in the water. Now I can grab it and then start shooting underwater. Once I'm underwater, what I will do is I will loosen up the system. First thing, you get in, you make sure your buoyancy is okay and all your dive gear, your computer is on, all those types of things with your dive. Second, you start to worry about your camera stuff. And what I'll do is I'll loosen up each of these clamps. I will position the strobe roughly where I'm going to want it for the dive, and then I'll tighten them all back up. Probably using the same hand. If let's say I'm holding this here, I'll be adjusting these like this with my other hand and vice versa. And generally what I like to do is find that sweet spot where the strobe is going to stay tight, whether I'm swimming into current, whether I'm moving around sideways a little bit, but is also loose enough that I can maneuver it to wherever I want. So what I like to do is go a little tighter here, a little looser here, medium, and then a lot looser at the head of the strobe. And with that system, that helps keep the strobe with the right amount of movement, but also the right tightness so that it doesn't flop around when I don't want it to. And tip number 2, this is how to move the strobe. We don't need to sit here and work on these arms and start going like this. That's really intimidating, especially if you haven't used a system like this before. All you need to do to position your strobe is grab it by the back with your hand and move it to where you want. And if we did a good job adjusting the clamps for the proper amount of tightness that we talked about in step 1, it'll be easy to grab the back of the strobe head and move it like this. And most of the strobes today are pretty easy to do. Past models of strobes have been very easy to bump settings and stuff when you're grabbing it from the back, but most of those issues and ergonomics have now been addressed, which is very cool and very useful. You're shooting like, why is it all dark? Oh, my strobe's off, of course, because I touched it. So that stuff's all gone. So grab the back of the strobe head and you can move it wherever, whether you're bare hands, whether you're in dry gloves, you can still just grab it, move it. The only thing to be careful of if you're using fiber optic cables is they do like to snap. So make sure you're not twisting them around any arms and clamps or anywhere they could get a pinch and then snap. And tip number 3, so this goes to the very basics of using our strobes and our lighting, and it is that when we get down the rabbit hole, we're getting too much overexposure, too much underexposure. Maybe it's the settings and the power of the strobe, maybe it's the positioning of the strobes, could be a combination of both, but we want to take a deep breath and then relax and reset the strobes. So if you're using 2 strobes, why don't you turn one off and just focus on using the one strobe, position it where you think you want it, work on your camera settings, work on the power of the strobe, the lighting, get everything set up nice in the frame, and only then turn on your second strobe and now add that as a fill light. So you've got a key light or a primary light lighting the subject, and then you've got a fill light which is filling in the shadows. So a lot of studio photographers like to think in that mentality. The same principles apply underwater. So if you're ever down the rabbit hole like that, think about it that way. If you're using a single strobe system, simply turn it off, work on your ambient light exposure. If it's a wide angle image, make sure you get that nice blue water in the background, and then flip on your strobe and worry about the foreground. I've got a whole tutorial in the members only section on my website about ambient light photography, whether it's on the surface, no strobes, or whether it's below the surface with strobes, so be sure to check that out. And those are our 3 basic tips for strobe positioning. Again, this video is meant to complement the 21-minute video on underwater strobe positioning. These are just quick logistical tips. I hope you found them useful. Definitely check out my website with a whole lot more video tutorials, tutorials.brentdurand.com. Hit that subscribe button below, and I'll see you in other videos. Thanks, guys.